Chevrolet Aveo of the second generation, 2011-2015 years of release. Good day. If you're wondering is it worth buying the second generation Chevrolet Aveo and what problems you may encounter during operation, then you're at the right place. So we can confidently say that the four-eyed Aveo turned out to be cute but not too practical. Vertically positioned front optics, for example, are constantly exposed to sandblasting and cloud very quickly. Trying to reduce the cost of the car, the manufacturer didn't install even penny mud flaps on the Aveo. As a result, the thresholds are not in the most attractive condition on most of the used copies. Fortunately, the body is well protected from corrosion. Nevertheless, the seals and the junction of the fender and rear bumper should be examined especially carefully before purchasing. The spare wheel well is worth examining just as carefully. Cars that have driven a lot on bumpy roads can develop fatigue cracks here. The interior of the Chevrolet Aveo still looks stylish, but this is true only if the owner was careful. If not, numerous painted plastic parts will be scratched. On a test ride, evaluate the motorcycle dashboard. Some constantly flickering speedometer readings are annoying. The rest of the ergonomics cannot be found fault. What cannot be said about the heater motor? At first it starts to whistle disgustingly and then completely breaks down. Another problem in the cabin is defective ignition system lock. Concerned General Motors changed it as a part of a revocable campaign. It's worth making sure that the lock is also replaced on the selected vehicle before purchasing it. In our market, the Chevrolet Aveo was sold with an uncontested 1.6-liter F16 D4 engine. Structurally, this engine is similar to the power units that were installed on the Chevrolet Lachetti model and several Opel models from the 80s of the last century. However, despite this, it cannot be called problem-free. An old but still unresolved problem is a penny valve cover gasket, which lasts 50,000 kilometers, after which it starts to leak oil. The problems are new: an unreliable ignition module and a short-lived thermostat. Failure of the latter threatens to overheat the engine. Nevertheless, operating experience suggests that even despite a number of characteristic problems, the Aveo engine is able to hold out about 250-300,000 kilometers without major repairs. The main thing is not to forget that a belt is used in the gas distribution mechanism of a 1.6-liter engine, which requires replacement every 100,000 kilometers. Another plus of the Aveo engine is the lack of valve lifters. The solution is especially pleasant also because in the previous version of this motor they were too delicate. The manual transmission, like the Aveo engine, comes from the 80s of the last century. But if the constructive simplicity of the power unit didn't make it reliable, then with the mechanics the opposite is true. It's quite reliable. More often than not, owners complain not about it, but about the loose shift lever. Fortunately, this is nothing more than a design feature. But the tight inclusion of the first and second gears cannot be attributed to this. If the gears are engaged with effort, then it's worth preparing to replace the synchronizers. The automatic transmission is inferior in reliability to the mechanics. But if you want the Aveo just on the automatic, then you should look for the most recent copy. The fact is that the engineers knew about the weak points of the box and periodically upgraded it. As a result, on the latest produced Chevrolet Aveo, its resource is estimated at 180 to 100,000 kilometers. Then comes the time to replace the friction discs and repair the torque converter. Regular oil changes help prolong the life of an automatic box. You will have to do this every 40,000 kilometers. The small ground clearance has forced many owners to work on the suspension modification. Installation of spacers, reinforced stabilizer struts and other shock absorbers is a minimum program for those who want to move not only on smooth asphalt. The owners also had to deal with the revision because the standard suspension of the Chevrolet Aveo turned out to be painfully flimsy. The braking system was not complete without modification. The design of the front brakes turned out to be frankly unsuccessful, because of which the caliper brackets began to dangle on the guides after several thousand kilometers. Owning a used Chevrolet Aveo is hardly completely stress-free. Initially, an inexpensive car will require not only attention but also financial costs. Especially often you will have to pay attention to the suspension, which, despite all the tricks of the owners of this model, still cannot boast of a high resource. However, if you have to drive mainly alone and on good roads, then the main drawback will not seem so terrible, especially when you consider that most of the Chevrolet Aveo rivals in the aftermarket are more expensive. If you are the owner, then be sure to leave a comment about this car. Your review will definitely help others with the choice of a car.